Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Podcasting Problem Solver. I'm Leah Bryant, certified podcast growth coach, producer, and your business growth sidekick, here to help you turn your podcast into a powerful marketing tool without burnout or without winging it. So today, we're going to tackle a question that's been coming up in my DMs and discovery calls, and maybe this sounds like you. Is it even worth starting a podcast now, Leah? Hasn't the market already peaked? Do people even listen to podcasts like they used to? Now, if that little voice in your head has been whispering, what's the point? You're not alone. Let's talk numbers for a second, because I know some of you are wondering if people still actually listen to podcasts. And that answer is a big strategic yes. So right now, there are about 4.5 million podcasts out there, but don't let that number scare you. Most of them are not active or consistent, which means there's still plenty of room to stand out with a smart aligned show. And here's what's even more exciting. Globally, around 584 million people are tuning into podcasts in 2025. And that's up nearly 7% from what it was last year. In the US alone, over 158 million people, that's more than half the population, are listening every month. And they're not just popping in for a quick listen. The average listener, well, they're spending about 7 hours a week with podcasts. That's long-form focused time, not just passive background noise, right? Most people are tuning in on their phones, with platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and Apple leading the charge. So yes, the market is growing, but more importantly, the audience is growing more intentional. They're choosing shows that are aligned, relevant, and worth their time, which means if you show up strategically, you're not too late. You're right on time. Now, podcasting isn't slowing down, it's expanding, not just in numbers, but in quality. And this means that more listeners, more consumed time, and a steadily growing audience that's more discerning than ever. We're not just seeing casual listening, we're seeing intentional time being carved out for the right shows. The ones that educate, inspire, and align with the listener's values. That's the opportunity. And quite frankly, the challenge, right? Because yes, people are tuning in by the billions and dedicating real time each week to podcasts, but they're also quicker to unsubscribe when a show feels scattered, irrelevant, or self-serving. In other words, attention is earned. And with a well-positioned podcast, you can earn it and keep it in a way that most platforms simply can't replicate. We're past the days when just having a podcast was enough. Listeners now want more than a weekly audio drop. They want a clear reason to hit play. They're asking, does this speak to where I am at in my journey? Will I walk away with something useful? And is this person actually saying something new or just echoing the same advice I've heard 10 times already? The truth is, audiences are craving substance. They're magnetized by depth and personality. They want hosts who actually have a point of view, not just a microphone. That's why strategic, aligned podcasts are still thriving, even in a crowded space, because they don't add to the noise, they cut through it. So what's the catch? Growth brings higher standards, right? So here's the part that trips people up. Yes, podcasting is still a powerful growth channel, but that doesn't mean that any podcast will do the job. A half-baked idea, inconsistent episodes, or a vague value proposition, well, that's not going to fly anymore. Today's audience has options, and they know when they're being sold fluff. So if you're thinking about launching just to check a box or build authority, hit pause, because launching without strategy is like publishing a book with no chapters. It might look legit from the outside, But once people crack it open, well, there's no substance to stick around for. To stand out, what you do need is strategy, clarity, consistency. That's what builds trust and traction. So let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. There are millions of podcasts. And yes, new ones launch daily. So it makes sense why so many business owners wonder if the ship has sailed. But here's the part that people miss. The average podcast never makes it past 7 episodes. Yep, 7. That's the average. It's called pod fade, and it's so real. People start with such good intentions, but no strategy, no sustainability, no alignment with their bigger business goals, and then they burn out or it just fizzles into the background. So while the directories may look full, the truth is the number of active, high-quality, consistent shows, that's still incredibly small. And that is your window because what looks like saturation is often just clutter. And when you lead with intention, you rise above it. Podcasting isn't oversaturated, it's maturing. The gold rush of anyone with a mic is fading, but what's rising? Listeners are now craving curated content from real experts, business owners who want every minute they spend listening to be worth it, and brands ready to build a podcast that's a strategic asset and not an afterthought. So, no, it's not too late. But it is time to get serious. Now, let's bust a big myth that I often hear, and that is a great podcast is built on the best equipment, celebrity guests, clever titles. No, that's not true. Okay, Leah, then what is it built on? Share with us, please. Well, it's built on alignment. It's alignment between who you are, who you serve, and what your business stands for. That is the magic that creates the connection. That's what makes your message stick. So here's what you really need to stand out. If you have a pen and paper, you can take notes, or you can come back and listen when you need an inspiration. So first up is a clearly defined audience. Yes, not just online business owners or creative entrepreneurs. Let's be specific about our listeners. We want to be really specific about their needs, their language, and their goals. Next up is a strong point of view. The internet doesn't need any more noise. It needs leadership. What do you believe in? What do you challenge? What do you stand for? And then consistent value. So not just weekly content, but a strategic plan. Episodes that guide your listeners through a journey and keep them coming back for more. Brand and offer alignment. Well, your podcast should serve your business, right? Not siphon energy from it. So when your content aligns with what you sell, your show becomes a growth engine, not just a passion project. And this is all in the strategy and attraction phases of my Seamless framework. And without it, even the most well-produced show can miss the mark. But with it, yep, you build a binge-worthy podcast that earns trust, drives leads, and makes your brand unforgettable. So let's zoom out for a second, and I want you to ask yourself a question. Where else do you get 20, 30, or even 40 minutes of someone's focused attention? Not a scroll, not a swipe, not a double tap, actual attention. Well, podcasting, because it gives you a direct line to your audience's ears, the space to build trust and credibility on your own terms, and then long-form content that can fuel your entire content ecosystem. Yes, for repurposing. And also the visibility that doesn't rely on a constantly changing algorithm. I can hear everyone saying yes. And that's rare and powerful. But here's the real magic. Unlike Instagram, TikTok, or even your email list, podcasting is personal. Your audience isn't passively consuming, they're actively connecting. So, what does that mean? Well, they're hearing your voice, steady, thoughtful, or maybe you're excited. Your tone, confident, relatable, maybe even a little scrappy at times. What about your energy? Yes, the real you, not the highlight reel. It's not background noise, it's relationship building in real time. And you know what the beauty of audio is? People feel like they know you. Before they ever buy from you, meet you, or fill out your inquiry form. And that kind of intimacy builds trust. And that trust, well, that's what turns browsers into buyers and listeners into loyal fans. In a world that's louder, faster, and more distracted than ever, podcasting helps you create a quiet, trusted space in someone's day. And that, my friend, that space is where the connection happens. Now, as much as I love podcasting, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the right move for everyone at every moment. Because here's the truth. Sometimes it's better to pause before you press record. Now, if you're still wrestling with your core message or ideal client, or maybe you're overextended and can't commit to consistent content, or maybe you're hoping your podcast will go viral and fix your whole funnel overnight, well, then starting a podcast right now might do more harm than good. But that's not failure. That's actually wisdom. Because podcasting is a long game. It's a strategy, not a shortcut. And like anything worthwhile, it requires intention and a clear foundation. If you're not quite there yet, that's okay. That is okay. And here's what I recommend to do instead. Use this season to refine your offers. Get clear on who you're serving and what they need to hear. Create the bandwidth to show up fully and not frantically. Because your mic, it'll still be there. And when you're ready to step up with purpose and consistency, that's when the magic happens. But maybe you're listening to my podcast right now and you're like, okay, Leah, but I've already launched my podcast. Maybe you started strong and lately it's kind of like feeling like something's off. You've grown, but your show hasn't. Maybe your messaging has shifted, but your episodes still reflect who you were a year ago. Or you're cringing at your intro music or show title. Maybe you're not sharing episodes anymore because deep down they don't feel like you. Or your downloads have flatlined and you're not sure why. Well, here's the thing. You don't need to start over. You just need a reset, a refresh. And that's why I created the Podcast Refresh Intensive. It's a half-day VIP experience to help align your show with the business and brand that you're building now. Together, we'll audit your positioning, rework your visuals so they reflect where you're headed, refine your format and episode flow, map out a content plan that feels sustainable and strategic. Because the truth is, your podcast deserves to evolve with you. And when it does, well, it becomes a tool you're excited to share again, not just something you feel obligated to maintain. But let me share a quick story with you. One of my VIP day clients came to me with a podcast that looked solid on the surface, consistent episodes, well-done guests, great production. But here's the thing. It wasn't doing anything for her business. She felt like she was just playing interviewer, like the mic was always pointed at someone else, while her own message stayed in the background. Well, during her Podcast Refresh Intensive, we kind of flipped the entire approach for her. We moved her from host to thought leader, shifted the spotlight to her insights, frameworks, and experience, reframed her episodes around the problems her ideal client was already trying to solve, and built a format that still welcomed guests, but kept her voice front and center. And now, well, her podcast sells for her. Clients are booking calls after binging her episodes. She's getting more speaking opportunities because her message is finally clear. And most importantly, well, she feels like a leader when she steps up to the mic. Because the podcast, it didn't need to be scrapped. It just needed to evolve to meet her at the level she's playing now. All right, so let's wrap up with some real talk. Is podcasting too saturated? Short answer, no. But lazy, unclear, misaligned podcasting? Yes, that's what's going to get you lost in the shuffle. Strategic podcasting, the kind that's intentional, rooted in service, and built around real connection, that's what cuts through the noise. That's what builds trust. That's what creates momentum. And that is what supports your business instead of draining it. So whether you're standing in the starting line with nothing but an idea, or you're staring down a podcast that no longer feels like you, know this. You don't need to guess your way forward. You don't need to wing it. And you definitely don't need to do it alone, because podcasting still works, powerfully, might I add, when it's done with clarity, consistency, and purpose. And when you align your voice with your vision, that, friends, is when your podcast becomes more than content. It becomes a catalyst. And that's exactly what I'm here to help you build. So join my newsletter for weekly podcast strategies, insights, and tools. Plus, I share my Seamless framework and other resources to guide you through your journey. It's kind of like having a podcast strategist in your inbox every week. The link is in the show notes for you. And if you want to talk through anything, book a free discovery call. We can chat about your goals, what's working, what's not, and how podcasting can fit strategically into your business. That link is also in the show notes. And hey, if you've got a podcasting question that you'd love for me to answer on the show, send it my way. I'd love to hear from you. And chances are someone else also needs that answer. Until next time, stay strategic, stay curious, and keep it seamless. Bye for now.